Shinya Tsukamoto is a Japanese film producer, screenwriter, editor, director, cinematographer, art director, production designer, and actor. He does it all. Often, he's the lead in many of his films. With a considerable cult following, both domestically and abroad, Tsukamoto began filming at the age of 14 when his father gave him a Super 8 camera. He is best known for his body horror cyberpunk films Tetsuo the Iron Man. It's worth noting that Tsukamoto acts in nearly all of his films, with the exception of those that he worked on as a director for hire. Tsukamoto has even appeared in other directors' films, such as Takashi Miike's Dead or Alive 2 and Ichi the Killer. He was also the lead actor in Takashi Shimizu's Moribito, and he appeared recently in Welcome to the Quiet Room. He is also a successful voiceover artist for TV advertising in Japan. He also provided the Japanese voice of Vamp from Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. Director Shinya Tsukamoto truly has a disturbed mind, and we can know this just by observing his films. Each film is an expression of the different aspects of this man's insane mind. Why would anyone want to go to such an insane place, you might ask? Well, because it's different and rather interesting, especially for anyone that's tired of mainstream movies that all share the same elements. With Tsukamoto films, you don't know what the hell you're in for. So when I saw the Tsukamoto box set, I reached for it because I watched a few of his films and I really enjoyed them for their originality and insaneness. But boy, was I still not ready for what I was about to be in for. Here are 10 absolutely insane Shinya Tsukamoto films. Tetsuo the Iron Man is a film that established Shinya Tsukamoto internationally and created his worldwide cult. This extremely graphic, but also strikingly filmed fantasy deals with a salaryman that accidentally hits a metal fetishist with his car and drives away. Consumed with guilt, his body begins turning gradually into metal. It includes an iconic scene in which the protagonist's penis is revealed to have turned into an electric drill. Tsukamoto's most famous film, and the one that made him famous. Tetsuo is considered the definitive example of Japanese cyberpunk. If you want to watch a Tsukamoto movie, it's best to start with this one, as this is the one that defies his style. There's aggressive use of jarring editing, stop-motion animation, bizarre sound effects, and grotesque and outlandish subject matter. This film has many interpretations. Some say it's about the destruction of nature by man, as Tokyo was becoming more developed over time when Tsukamoto filmed this. Tsukamoto also stated that he has a love-hate relationship with Tokyo, and that's the reason for the ending to this movie. I believe this movie depicts the insanity that goes with the lifestyle of a 9-to-5 work life, and the pressure from others to work a contemporary job that you detest. It could also be a response to the film industry, which just pushes the same types of movie over and over again, while others believe it's technology replacing organic life forms. Whichever it is, it's an amazing movie, and incredible what was achieved with such a tiny budget, considering it's now considered a cult classic. This is my favorite Tsukamoto film, and the main reason why I checked out his others. When Shinya Tsukamoto was growing up in Tokyo, there were still green open spaces in the city, but now he sees it transformed into a towering compacted mass of steel and concrete. This is not altogether a bad thing, he believes. Both visions of the city attract him, but the inhabitants of the new Tokyo must adapt in order to survive, and have become steel and concrete themselves. And that is what happens in the gruesomely fascinating images of Tetsuo II Body Hammer. Body Hammer revisits many of the same ideas of the first film, but with a bigger budget, and it's shot in color on a 35mm film. In Body Hammer, a salaryman's son is kidnapped by a group of thugs, who then force the man's rage to make him mutate into a gigantic human weapon. The film does diverge from the original in a number of ways, not the least of which being that it tries to supply understandable motives for everyone involved. Many critics cited this as a weakness since the nightmarish, surreal feeling of the first film, whether by accident or design, proved one of the strongest assets of it. This is one of the earliest films and was shot in the same low-budget underground film style as Tetsuo. It's about an unhappy young boy with an electric rod growing out of his back, who is transported into the future and must do battle with cyborg vampires trying to destroy sunlight. Wow. While to say this movie is really weird may not be saying much when it was directed by the king of weird, but this movie is really weird. Too weird for even my taste. But luckily it's only 45 minutes long. It's basically a 45-minute long music video of Japanese punk rock. I can't say it's a good movie, but I guess it's worth watching if you want to see some of the early cyberpunk influences that would later be in Tetsuo the Iron Man. Like with Tetsuo, this also deals with the idea of rage as a transformative force, similar to David Cronenberg's The Brood. Director Tsukamoto himself plays Suda, a nerdy insurance salesman that lives a peaceful life with his fiancée Hizuru. Still, Suda appears to be on the brink of insanity over something. Actually, characters being insane is quite normal in Tsukamoto films, so. Soon his high school friend Kojima arrives, who's played by the director's brother Koji Tsukamoto, and he is a professional boxer, and a very strong one. When he starts to be interested in Suda's fiancée, all physical and mental hell break loose, as Suda gets an obsession to start to box himself, and Hizuru starts to have some very severe habits of body piercing and self-mutilation. What follows is a roller coaster into the inner depths of insanity and despair, where physical violence is the only solution. Punches land to cause geysers of blood that spray in the faces of the audience. It's a surreal nightmare, but it's also why we watch Tsukamoto films. Tsukamoto has the talent to hammer and force things to the skull and spinal cord of the viewer, and he does it all with the magic of editing and cinematography. And let's also not forget Chu Ishikawa's pounding and merciless soundtrack, which is here and it's just as effective as it was in Tetsuo. Expect plenty of shaky camera effects and fast edits that Tsukamoto is known for. The film's theme is about human nature and its jealous and weaker sides, and how the character can't live without taking or producing physical pain. The smashed faces and the scenes of surreal gore and nightmarish anger are really something to make us question the characters' motives. Why can't human nature just solve things without physical force and violence? And how many of us dare to admit the brute side of ourselves and accept them? Bullet Ballet goes even farther than fantasy and science fiction, and more into a sort of film noir. It follows Goda, played by Shinya Tsukamoto of course. Goda seems content with his life. He has a nice job, he's working as a commercial director, has a long-term girlfriend, and at the moment, he is sitting at a table apparently drinking. The phone rings, it's his girlfriend. They have a nice little chat, and Goda seems pleased. And why shouldn't he be? Everything is alright. The conversation ends, Goda returns home, finds his girlfriend dead. She killed herself. She killed herself with a gun. Goda doesn't understand why. Everything was alright just a minute ago. They were talking on the phone and then she killed herself. Goda is lost. He is standing in front of an old mirror in an old room. Goda raises his hand as if it was a gun. He aims it at the reflection, tense, and pulls the imaginary trigger 3 times. Titles roll, Bullet Ballet. Chu Ishikawa, as usual, does the soundtrack, and what a soundtrack it is. Industrial sounds hit you like a jackhammer, increasing the effects of some of the dark mood the movie carries throughout. This one is similar to Tetsuo in that it's about an average man that gains power. The power this time being a gun. This movie, however, does slow down and becomes a little confusing halfway through, though it's still a fun ride into the insane world. It follows a woman named Rinko Tatsumi that works as a telephone counselor at a Tokyo area suicide hotline. We see her as pleasant but somewhat unsure of herself while doing her job. And we see her at home where she is oddly distanced from her husband. She receives an odd package in the mail in which she discovers erotic photographs of herself. Another package contains a cell phone. The photographer calls her and she finds herself embroiled in a relationship with a stalker who threatens to expose her unless she does what he says. What follows is an erotic roller coaster filled with filmography that's oozing with sexuality. The film is shot in black and white, and the film was tinted blue during the process. June is Japan's rainy season, and the title refers partially to the month. Tsukamoto sets the film amidst almost constant, frequent torrential rainfall. The combined effect is very dreamlike. It's melancholy, but sensual at the same time, and establishes the perfect mood for the story. The filmography gives an uneasy, haunting feeling. The shaky imagery which perfectly captures fear and anxiety of the main protagonist. This is definitely one of Tsukamoto's better films, and an interesting exploration of sexual suppression from an insane mind. Vital takes place after a tragic car accident where his girlfriend Ryoko, played by Nami Tsukamoto, died. Hiroshi Takagi suffers amnesia with his memories completely blanked. When he sees a book about dissection, he decides to join the medical school with the support of his parents. In the dissection class, his group participates in the autopsy of a young woman, and while cutting apart the tissue, he partially recalls the accident. Later, when he sees a tattoo in the arm of the corpse he's dissecting, and becomes obsessed to go even further in the examination of the body. This was a surprisingly good film, and it's the most tame out of all these films. No over-the-top violence or geysers of blood in this one. It's a slow-paced film with twists and revelations. The young man with amnesia starts to recall his memory. Definitely one of the better Tsukamoto films, and I recommend it. Haze is the most disturbing out of all these films. It's about a man played by Tsukamoto himself, wakes up to find himself locked in a cramped concrete maze of corridors, in which he can barely move. He doesn't remember why he's here or how he even got there. He has a terrible stomach injury and is slowly bleeding to death. There's different visions throughout the film, like a force knocking on a huge door in which he can't reach, a mutilated body floating on the surface of a source of water that's in space. They begin a conversation about life, dreams, death, and what is happening to each other, and how to escape. He wonders if the world is at war, and that they are prisoners, or just some pervert locked them away for whatever reason. Or is it really just a very nasty nightmare, or are they in hell? This is a short film that's only 50 minutes long, and it's basically just a bunch of horrific puzzles that the main character must find a way out of. It's pretty similar to the Saw movies. There's this one particular trap that involves teeth grinding on a metal pipe, and was not easy at all to watch. And actually I'm pretty used to watching disturbing films like this, but this was too much. It's actually a good thing that this film's only 50 minutes long because I couldn't take anymore and it got its point across. Truly a strange film, even for Tsukamoto. Kotako is about a single mother that is tormented by frightening visions. She struggles to take care of herself and her newborn child, realizing that the key to figuring out how to save herself is with a new relationship, only to realize her madness hasn't left her and is always close to being fully unleashed and violent towards herself and others. This movie had an interesting premise and a great depiction of mental illness. It starts off interesting, but ultimately it becomes a confusing and boring letdown. While not as bad as Denchu-Kozo, it's Still one of the worst films on the box set, just because I had to struggle to finish it. But I'll still praise it for having small levels of genius. Like this one scene where the mother thinks she dropped her baby and starts freaking out. And there's also interesting camera work that makes you feel as disoriented as the main character. This movie is also shot in bright and beautiful locations, as opposed to the usual claustrophobic black and white nightmarish backdrops. Killing is about a young man named, well, I'm not going to butcher the name, but he lives more in imagination than reality. He is a young samurai in feudal Japan who has not fought, much less killed anyone. He is helping the villagers harvest rice, nursing a crush on you, and sparring with her brother. Then an opportunity knocks. An experienced warrior is forming a fighting unit to raid the capital and tries to recruit him. The first kill is always the hardest, but doubt may prove tougher still. The movie is called Killing because it deals with the difficulty of killing someone for the first time. Obviously, I'm already a fan of this film because it has samurai in it, and I'd rank it as one of the better films in the box set. It's a very short film, only 80 minutes in length, but that's also what helps it get straight to the point, without dragging into the second act like most of his films. This film is brightly shot in wide open outdoor environments, another oddity for the director, which loves the black and light. There is some quick camera work when it comes to the fights, which I'm usually not a fan of, but here it's done effectively, creating this hallucinogenic atmosphere of confusion and chaos. It starts off tame, but before you know it, it goes off the walls with violence, gore, and the surreal craziness we've come to expect and love from this very creative director. So this man's films aren't for everyone, but then again, neither are mainstream movies, and it's a change of pace for anyone that is in the mood for something different. They were also a great study for anyone that's into film, but they're also great films for someone who wants to delve into a little madness once in a while. As Edgar Allan Poe once said, "I became insane with long intervals of horrible sanity." Thanks for watching.
普段がいい人なので、映画の中ではそういう真逆のことをやって、自分の気持ちの調整を図りたいなと。